Thank you. All right, it is 7:30 and we're going to call our December 15th Valley Park Board of Education meeting to order. If you would please stand with me as we say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Going to ask Board Member Adam Watson if you would please read the mission of the Valley Park School District.
The Valley Park School District is dedicated to providing a safe and supportive environment of belonging where personalized learning experiences prepare our students holistically for limitless opportunities, empowering them to make the world a better place.
First, I would like to ask Dr. Looney, please present our athletes of the month for December.
Thank you, Board of Education, for allowing me the privilege to introduce our two athletes of the month for December. As you know, each month we recognize two outstanding students for their athletic performances in the preceding month. These athletes are recommended by their coaches. These student athletes have excelled in their chosen discipline, and I am extremely excited to share their accomplishments with you. Our first athlete of the month for the month of December is Jillian Duvall, one of our cheerleaders. Jillian, come on up. The coaches are proud to nominate Jillian Duvall as the athlete of the month for the month of December. Jillian always tries her best, giving 110% on and off the court. She remains calm during the stressful times and does everything full out. Jillian has exceptional leadership qualities and motivates her teammates to work just as hard. Congratulations, Jillian, on being named a December Athlete of the Month. Our second athlete of the month for December is Will Geary. Will Geary is a member of our boys basketball team. He began his high school career first game as a freshman by leading the team to a victory versus Maplewood Richmond Heights and scored 40 points in that outing. He has led the team in points, rebounds, and steals for the month. Will plays extremely hard and has a tremendous work ethic. He is very coachable and always looking to improve. Will is an outstanding teammate and works to make others better around him. The coaching staff is honored to have the opportunity to coach Will. Congratulations, Will, on being our second December Athlete of the Month.
So before we go any farther in our board meeting, I did just have a few comments. I wanted to just remind everybody that this is homecoming week, and this Friday we have our homecoming basketball games followed by our homecoming dance. Thankful that we could do that and the work that's been put into that through our administration, but also through our student council and all the different things that they have going on. Grateful for them and just the hard work and making sure that happens. So I want to make sure that gets out there and that we can have people at the game as well. I also just wanted to make a quick comment before we move on and approve our agenda that despite the different things that are on our agenda tonight, I want to be clear that it is not the desire of this board to politicize our children and use them in ways to get across a larger agenda. And so we want to make sure that as Adam stated in our in the mission of Valley Park School District, that we are here for providing a safe and supportive environment, whether that is masked or unmasked, that we are doing our best to do that without politicizing our children or our teachers. So that was the main comment that I want to make today. Make sure that we are all on the same page with that. I'm going to make a motion to approve our agenda this evening. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? First, we have our consent items. We have 4.01, the approval of regular session minutes from our November 17th meeting. 4.02, the approval of our check register from December. 4.03, the obsolescence of high school textbooks. 4.04, the obsolescence of student desks. And 4.05, the approval of turf management contract with True Green. I'm going to make a motion to approve our consent items. Can I have a second?
Second.
Would anybody like to pull out any of these items to discuss separately? All those in favor of approving our consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, consent items. Dr. Kelly Lowe, the approval of the 2021 district financial audit.
Each year, the Valley Park School District has an external auditor come in and look at our finances. There's a couple of things that we want to do with this process. Is we want the external auditors, which is Bick, Eggemeyer, and Williamson. They're contracted to the school district right now. We want to provide transparency of our finances. We want to make sure that everyone sees what money we received and how we're spending that. And the second part of that is if we're doing anything wrong or the auditors suggest that we could improve upon, we want to know that. I'm going to introduce Keith. He's here with Vic, Eggemeyer, and Williamson. He conducted our audit this year and he will address the board.
Good evening, everyone. I will try to keep a boring subject as exciting as possible. And it's not exciting, at least fast. So have the audit there in front of you, hopefully.
Yes.
Page 1 and 2 of your audit is our independent auditor's report. This is the main purpose of what we're doing. There's a lot of pages here, but really all you care about is, do we have a clean opinion? We have an unmodified opinion, which is the type of opinion you want to receive, and it's found no departures from GAAP or other governmental auditing standards. Page 3 of the audit is our balance sheet. Here we combine all your funds together, show them as one number. You're used to seeing financial statements broken up. Your 4 different funds for government-wide financial statements, we show it all as one. 2 pages from there, page 5, is probably a little bit more what you're used to seeing. Each fund is broken out: general, special revenue, debt, and capital projects. 2 pages from there, the next number people care about, so here's our cash. It's how do we do from year to year? At the very bottom of the page, you can see how each fund performed during the year. Other than the capital projects fund, which spent down the remainder of the bond fund, every fund had a positive increase, had positive cash flows on the year. So our cash position increased from year to year. So do we have a clean opinion and do we have cash? Yes and yes. So most of you don't care beyond this, but I'll keep going. Page 10, start of the notes. We explain the thoughts behind our accounting procedure. What is the estimate? What is the modified cash basis of accounting? We kind of go into details, explaining all of these items to you. First page of note in there would be page 14. This is just to let you know that all of your cash was secured by FDIC insurance or pledge securities, state statute. We're in compliance with that state statute. I just always like to point that out. The next page, how much debt do we have? Well, at the very bottom of page 15, it tells you all our debt and how much is left on those. During the year, we paid off the 2010B and 2014A bonds. Following page tells you by year how much you have to go and how much interest we have on those bonds. Obviously, those are all being paid by debt service taxes, so you aren't using general fund monies to pay them. But this is what you have going out into the future. Follows with the budget. There's a schedule of selected statistics, and then the last other page I point out would be page 30, which is really far out in the future on your audit. We also, as part of the audit, we're required to test your internal controls. So we do an audit under governmental auditing standards. It's called a yellow book audit. Many years ago, the book was actually yellow. So as accountants are really clever, so we call it yellow. It's actually now the book is blue. So to us, to old people, we still call it yellow book, but to the newer generation, it's actually blue book audit. We found no deficiencies in internal control, material weaknesses, that rise to that level. So there's kind of a second report that we issue with that. We did not have a single audit this year. So if you have more than 750,000 in federal expenditures, you're supposed to have a federal single audit. Our federal revenues exceeded 750, I believe. But we did, because of the timing of expenditures, we didn't exceed that 750 threshold. So that's why we did not do a single audit. Our federal revenues were 876. So one would think, hey, we should have a federal single audit. Our expenditures were below. So. But quick and not boring. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may or may not have.
First, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve our financial audit. And a second.
Second.
Anybody have any questions?
Make it easy on me. All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You guys have a great evening.
All right, so we will go and take a vote. All those in favor of approving our 2021 district financial audit? Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. All right. Dr. Dilge, our COVID mitigation strategies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Hardesty, you can call the presentation for me, please. So tonight I've been asked to share with the Board of Education and our community an update on our return to learn plan. Our agenda for this evening will cover four things. First of all, our priorities, both from the beginning of COVID-19 to our current state today. Some data regarding our weekly attendance, our COVID positivity rates, transmission rates, as well as St. Louis County data. Legal updates in relation to the Cole County court dates and also in relation to board policy and state statutes. And then return to learn options for the board to consider from a mask optional environment to a mask required environment. And then of course, opportunity for you all to discuss those decisions. So from the very beginning of COVID-19, going way back to March of 2020, our priority has been and remains to prioritize the health and wellness of our students and staff. Now, we have done that through a variety of methods, and as we've learned and persisted through the pandemic, we've modified those methods all along to best meet the needs of our school community. So in March of 2020, that looked like full virtual learning. In the fall of 2020, it was the initial start of virtual learning, then taking a really managed and intentional approach to rolling students back in with our lower levels first, 2 grade levels at a time. It looked like the 4-day learning model, which allowed our teachers to still connect on Fridays with those students virtually on Fridays, while also data teaming and planning for trying to live in a world that had both students in front of them, but also students learning via live stream throughout the year. And now today, that brings us to our current model, which is 5 days in person with many of our traditional activities and events taking place. As we started this school year, our priority has been to safely and consistently educate students in person 5 days a week in accordance with our calendar. And as you'll see a little bit later on, we've been able to do that very successfully. In addition to talking about kind of COVID and our mitigation strategies, this also does align with our current mission of the Valley Park School District, which part of it says specifically to provide a safe and supportive environment of belonging or personalized learning experience, prepare our students holistically for limitless learning opportunities, empowering them to make the world a better place. That word safety and support has looked very different since the school district has kind of adopted and modified that mission over the years. If we were sitting here 3 or 4 years ago, that would have looked at like things like security badges and security cameras and locks on doors and secured entrances. In the age of COVID, obviously that takes on a much different look. When we're thinking about how do we safely educate our kids while keeping our students, staff, and community safe as well. So this is a lot of colors and a lot of lines to indicate the different attendance rates both throughout the district and our school district. A couple of things I want to point out to you. We have consistently from August through November educated kids at a 90% or better attendance rates, oftentimes hovering between 92 and 94%. It's significant that one little blip on November 1st, and then pretty much what you see from November 1st through December 6th is kind of a pretty dramatic decline in attendance, which could indicate any number of things, some of which we're going to talk about specifically. But the other reason that's significant is when we look in a minute at St. Louis County COVID numbers, our dip in attendance also corresponds directly with an uptick in positivity and transmission rates in the county itself too. So just some things to keep in mind and some things we might want to come back to and discuss a little bit at the end as well. Speaking of those positivity numbers and rates, on my left are the current positivity percentage rates in St. Louis County as of yesterday. It's the highest it's been in quite some time, exceeding 11% positivity rate. Likewise, when you look at rates of cases per 100,000 individuals, they're also in that what the CDC considers that high transmission area. Bottom line is when you're getting into that red part of the thermometer, that's not good. When you look to the bottom right-hand corner, though the numbers are small, what you essentially see is on November 1st, transmission and positivity rates in St. Louis County hovered around 5%. They have steadily increased since that time to where we currently stand today, hovering around 11% positivity. The CDC thresholds, they kind of give 4 different indicators of community transmission, low transmission being positivity under 5%, moderate being between 5 and 7.9, substantial being between 8 and 9.9, and then high, anything over 10%. Those numbers are, and those ranges are thresholds by the CDC are not only significant as we're looking at St. Louis County data numbers, but we'll also be talking about those again when we talk about a modified mask optional environment and some metrics we might want to look at if you choose to explore that as well. So there's been a lot of obviously media attention recently, really since right before Thanksgiving around the Cole County court case. Essentially what that court case ruled in Cole County was that public health authorities basically have very limited control when it comes to quarantine and isolation rules. The court case itself was specific to the Department of Health and Senior Services. We also believe in consulting with our legal counsel that it does have applications for St. Louis County Department of Health as well. And so what that means for us, and we're going to talk a little bit deeper about that. One thing that we definitely have to change regardless of your decision tonight is we have to modify some of our quarantine practices based on some of those rulings. What it does not impact is our safety mitigation strategies, which include social distancing, masking, et cetera. Also important to note, that order does not go into effect until really December 23rd. December 22nd is 30 days after the order was issued. Like any order, there are 30 days for appealing that order. It is important to note that the Attorney General was actually the lawyer of record who lost in the Cole County court case. He has made it very clear that he will not be appealing that. In the media, depends on how much you read or how much you dive into it. Apparently, there are others that are considering that appeal. I don't have anything new knowledge to add to that as far as this evening, but I do know the Attorney General has been very clear he will not be appealing that order on behalf of the Department of Health and Senior Services. So how does this apply to us? Well, quarantine, we have learned is a medical term that applies to orders issued by entities and jurisdiction over public health procedures. Essentially, what it means is that people will truly be isolated to their home. Now, obviously, we know in regards to quarantine, we have no control once people leave our school premises. And so the idea of quarantine really isn't accurate. We're excluding them from our school environment because of positivity, close contact, et cetera. But it's not true quarantine because once they leave here, we really don't know what goes on. So we don't have authority under that order to quarantine. So we're going to have to modify our practices to control our school property and our school activities. What we do have within our control is the ability to exclude. And so a school district can exclude a person and prevent them from being present at a location under control of the entity, which is you as the local school board. We also have the authority to exclude persons if we believe they have a specific time or a contagious virus that we believe they could spread to others. Some of the laws and policies that empower you as a school board to do that are also present on the screen. We currently have board policy on communicable diseases. Some of the words and highlights and statements you can pull out from that policy. That board policy on communicable diseases requires all staff to routinely employ universal precautions to prevent exposure to disease-causing organisms. Students and employees with communicable disease that pose a risk of transmission in school or school activities will be managed as required by law and guidelines provided by DHSS or the Department of Health. And such management may include, but is not limited to, exclusion from schools for the health and safety of students and staff. Now, all of your board policies are on board docs, as they have always been. If you revisit that policy, you'll notice that that policy has been in place long before we ever knew what the coronavirus was. And throughout the history of the school district, my guess is they've had to employ it for a number of different things over time. There's also several Missouri state statutes that apply to this. Those state statutes, specifically 167-191, says it is unlawful for any child to attend a school with any contagious or infectious disease or while liable to transmit such disease after being exposed to it. That'll come in particularly handy when we start talking about exclusion policies. Also states that statutes, the board of directors may require a child be examined by a physician and exclude the child from school so long as there is any liability of such disease being transmitted. And finally, it says the board of directors may exclude a child from school if the parent or guardian refuses to have an examination made by a physician at the request of the board of directors, aka. More state statutes to support your work as a school board, and one very important Supreme Court case. The Missouri Supreme Court has ruled that school boards can enforce reasonable rules to prevent disease in schools. The other state statutes that apply to our mitigation strategies and practices include that the board has general control of the property and affairs of any school district. A school board has government and control of its school district, and the school board may make all needful rules and regulations for the government of the school district. Within the last week, the Missouri School Board Associations has also issued a statement directly in response to the Cole County case and the Attorney General's orders that says they encourage school boards to continue to maintain safe and healthy learning environments for students and staff by consulting advice issued by contagious disease experts such as the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services or the Center for Disease Control, all of which we have consulted with all along. So let's talk about exclusion. The one thing that we absolutely have to change in our mitigation plans is our definition of exclusion and what that looks like. One thing we will no longer be able to do is to apply the Department of Health's quarantine guidelines for the Department of Health. We're not agents of the Department of Health. We cannot act for them. And what I mean by that is when we were doing things such as close contact and things, that is no longer within our authority within the school district. We can still honor any order if the Department of Health actually gives us some type of letter that says a student should be excluded. We can honor quarantine by a medical provider that says a student should be excluded from school, but we cannot do that under this current Cole County order. So come January 4th, we're going to have to change our exclusion rules. This is what I propose those exclusion rules look like. Again, reminder, according to board policy EBB and that Missouri Revised Statute 167-191, you do have the authority to exclude the following individuals from school according to these policies. So we'll continue to exclude students from school who test positive for COVID-19. We will also continue to exclude students from school who are close contacts of household and family members if they are unvaccinated. That's what we've been doing all year in that policy. The one asterisk to that is we do require, if a family says my student is vaccinated, that they demonstrate proof of vaccination in order to remain in school. We will also exclude students from schools with symptoms. If students have one or more COVID symptoms, one low-risk symptom, they have to remain excluded from school for 24 hours or be symptom-free. If they have one or more high-risk symptoms or two or more of the low-risk symptoms, then they must be excluded from school for until they at least provide a physician's note saying it is something other than COVID-19, or they produce a medical verified negative COVID-19 test. By medically verified, we mean not an at-home test. Right. As I said earlier, while we can no longer quarantine, a physician may decide to do that. We would honor that from any physician in the area. And the local health department, they apparently have authority and are authorized to do that. We would honor that if they actually provide proof to us, but we will not be acting as agents for the Department of Health. So if the school board wanted to consider a mask optional plan, this is what I would propose. I would ask that you think about giving our students in our school districts time to transition to that mask optional plan and not make it effective until January 18th. In the mask optional plan, which is provided for you on board docs, the mask would remain optional as long as a weekly percentage of positivity and quarantine or exclusion does not exceed 4% of a school's total population. Now, where do we get 4%? If we go back to those CDC thresholds about low community transmission rate, remember low transmission was under 5%. So certainly we don't want to give above the low transmission rate. If an individual building went above 4%, what we would do, we would make mask required again for a minimum of 2 weeks. At the end of that 2-week period, if the rates of positivity and transmission and quarantine and exclusion went below 2%, the mask would come back off. If it stayed above 2%, the mask would stay on for another 2 weeks until it dropped below 2% in that 2-week period. It is important to note when considering a proposed mask optional plan that the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, most leading medical experts, hospitals, they all continue to recommend masks as effective precautionary measures against COVID-19. The CDC and the American Pediatric Association very specifically state that even vaccinated individuals in schools should continue to mask because it helps keep kids in school. So something to consider when you're thinking about your proposed mask optional plan. Numbers are really small here, but basically what we've laid for you is the rate of combined positivity and quarantine and exclusion for each one of our buildings, elementary, middle, and high school, as well as district rates for every week period throughout the entire school year. The one thing you can probably see easily is an orange circle flying around that screen. That orange circle is the one time a building in our district has exceeded 4%. We had the high school exceed 4% back in, I think, September. They were close again, around a 3% range a couple of weeks before that. For the most part, our average building combined positivity and quarantine or exclusion rates hovers between kind of 0.5 and 1.5 to 2.5 per week. But it's also important to keep in mind that these are our rates with mask on and our other safety mitigations in place as well. What I provided for you at the bottom are the number of students that would have to have combined cases in each of the buildings for masks to be required. So for our high school, we would need 11 combined cases. Our middle school, 7 combined cases, elementary, 13 combined cases, and then early childhood, 2 combined cases. If we did reach a district total of 33 or more, we would put them back on for the entire district as well. And then to the right, you obviously take those numbers in half to get to the 2% barrier. It is both intentional and unintentional. The early childhood is not on there. To save space, we have had only 3 instances where students have had to be excluded from the early childhood this school year. It was way back in September, so there was really no need to put a bunch of zeros up there and save some space on the screen. So some other things that I think you need to think about if you're exploring and considering the mask optional environment. And first and foremost, that's timing. So we're about ready to head into winter break on Friday afternoon. As all the medical experts have been talking about, not only are we heading into winter break, we're in the heart of flu season. We're about to go into much more social gatherings indoors with others. And as we have seen since November 1st, those positivity and transmission rates are rising pretty much as they predicted as the cooler weather and more indoor type activities increase. Cold and flu season is definitely relevant. While you can see that most of the time our positivity rate, as I said, has been kind of around or under that 2% exclusion rate, you've also seen towards the end of November that student absenteeism, because of illness and other reasons, has been more around 10%. So that tells us any number of things. One, It tells us our families are doing what they're asked to do about keeping students home when they're not feeling well and not transmitting to others. But it also, I think, should make us wonder is if our positivity numbers wouldn't be higher with increased testing as well. I think that's a fair question to ask, but it certainly aligns with what we're seeing in the county with increased positivity rates. Really, I do think if we're going to transition to a mask optional environment, I do think it's important that our families and our staff have time to process that, both socially, emotionally, and physically. By announcing today that you're going mask optional, that would essentially give them 30 days notice. For some of our students and families that have anxiety or fear that's centered around masking and other things, I think it's important for them to be able to talk through that with their student and their families to help them process before this happens. I also think for any staff or any families who to this point have chosen that vaccination is not right for them, that this provides them opportunity to consider whether or not that is something that they want to consider before walking into learn or educate in a mask optional environment. As far as vaccines, another reason that I would suggest we do not start prior to January 18th is really the ability for our younger students to get vaccinated is still pretty much in its infancy. Just this past weekend, we were able to provide over 50 vaccines to younger students in our district. I certainly suspect more families have taken advantage outside of the district to do that, but our second shot for that vaccine isn't until January 8th. So that's another reason to consider. And then, as I talked about, unvaccinated staff and unvaccinated families, they can still determine and have some time to decide if that's right for them and try to access that vaccine as well. Another key consideration as far as the school district goes is virtual learning requests. If we think back to last school year, a number of our families were uncomfortable educating kids in person. And so our virtual learning requests were much higher than they were this year. I do fully expect once we transition to a mask optional environment, we will have some families that choose for their child's safety or because they have family members who perhaps are immune compromised to educate their kids at home. We do ask, both in accordance with board policy, but also state statutes, families are supposed to notify us 2 weeks prior to the start of the semester to enroll into virtual learning. And if you remember, because of the change in the calendar, our first semester doesn't actually end until that second week in January now, because of having to move that start date back. And so that's another consideration that went into the whole numbering of January 18th as well, so that our students could finish out the first semester, also give families time to make their request if they didn't want to go virtual learning, and then start the second semester on January 18th. So some key points and clarifications. Obviously, you have 2 decisions tonight. You can continue to basically move forward with our current mitigation strategies. The only true changes being those exclusion policies that we talked about previously, or you can consider the January 18th mask optional or anything in between for that matter. If you chose, just a couple of key points on both those options that were presented to you on board docs. The exclusion rules, regardless of the plan, those go into effect for both plans and go into effect January 4th. Also very important to point out, regardless of the plan you choose this evening, students must continue to follow the federal masking requirement while riding the bus in both plans. And if you choose the mask optional plan, that would not go into effect until January 18th if you approve it. Regardless of the plan you choose, the other mitigation strategies, social distancing, hand washing, disinfecting, cleaning, the things we've been doing throughout the school year, those would remain in place in both plans. And then we would also continue, even though we cannot exclude students for close contact, we would, from our communication standpoint, continue to communicate with families if a student in their class tests positive and ask them to monitor their child's symptoms and obviously get them tested if they felt they started to present. Vaccines are still not required for school attendance. Obviously, they're highly encouraged. However, as I pointed out earlier, for a student to avoid being excluded as a close contact at home, families would need to provide proof of vaccination. So with that, I'll turn it over to you and answer any questions you may have.
I move that the board approve the mask required amended plan and reject the mask optional plan.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, we can go ahead and discuss. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Dills regarding the return to learn update and the mask requirements.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to know that students still eat lunch without a mask. They go to recess without a mask. When they leave here, they go shopping without a mask. So, I don't know how much mitigation we're getting from it because they're still eating and going to recess together. So, I'm for mask as voluntary by the parents.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions for Dr. Dilge regarding the return to learn update?
I think Dr. Dilge's numbers on keeping kids in school for his plan, I think they speak for themselves. I think this plan has kept us in a 5-day-a-week posture for our kids. I think to change it now would harm their chances of being able to stay in.
I would also like to say that I think that the positivity rates increasing in our area is a concern. And I know that we can revisit this at any time. So, I feel like I'm in support of maintaining the mask mandate.
I have something that I wrote down that I'd like to read.
Please.
I want to stay focused and not go that way. Okay. So I know tonight is weighing heavily on all of us, not just the board or Dr. Dilge, but on everyone in this room. First, I want to thank the people for reaching out to us. That is what we are here for, to listen to both sides and weigh what we believe is in the best interest of the students and staff. We really do listen. At the end of the day, a decision has to be made, and at the end of the day, it isn't going to go the way of, it has to go the way of one side of the coin. Whatever is decided tonight, I want to remind everyone that our children will be watching us, and the way we react is going to be a teachable moment. I think it's human nature to want to build a good foundation for our own children, even stronger than what we had. Sorry. Our reactions tonight will make their lives easier or harder tomorrow. Not just tomorrow, but how they will cope with adversity for the rest of their lives. So.
I think we're looking at a real small picture. Look at how many families are traveling on planes and, they don't think nothing of that, but then they come to school and we all want everybody to be perfectly safe and spread apart, but then it's okay for the families to leave and travel and go to other states with higher conductivity rates, but nobody says anything about that. But we come back to that part and we all have to put a mask on.
Well, if they are doing those unsafe things, then when they come back to our school and mix with everyone else who is doing those things, having a mask on gives us a shot at protecting them.
If the parents want to protect their children, they have
I
the option
understand,
to
I
put the
can't make
mask on.
decisions for other parents, but I can tell you that our goal is to protect the whole.
Your mask works, it shouldn't
This
matter.
is not a time for public comment.
And we have, control over the environment here. We don't have control over the whole world. So what we have to do is, provide an environment here that we feel provides the safest way for kids to stay in school.
Well, and I agree with you, Delvin, and I would say what's going on, everybody needs to look at lunch, everybody needs to look at recess, everybody's close together, nobody's wearing a mask, and then as soon as they walk inside the building, put a mask on.
Well, we have a lot of times when kids do have masks on, recess is usually outside.
And lunch isn't. Kind of hard to eat with a mask on. We all go to restaurants, right? It's the same thing.
Speaking of that, what type of, just so we're clear, what type of mitigation processes are in place while the students are eating lunch?
Yeah, so at both middle school and high school level, we've done this for our second school year. Students are in rows and desks with assigned seating, so we're not using the cafeteria tables. One of the things that's allowed us to do is the contact trace versus just complete intermingling. Same thing at the elementary, we've separated every other seat with assigned seating for students as well. But of course, there is, to Pete's point, I want to point out, there's risk involved.
Absolutely.
You have to take a mask off to eat. There are, we have throughout the time allowed our students, not only in recess, but also in our physical education classes, to remove their mask when they're physically exerting themselves. There are going to be times.
Tim, is there anybody virtual now because of the mask mandate? I know you mentioned that we would have people, if we want a mask optional, we would have people want to go virtual. Do we have anybody virtual now because of the mask?
I wouldn't be able to answer.
You know what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. I don't know. I don't have that in front of me. We do not have large numbers of students. I think you remember, I think we have 3 elementary students and maybe a handful of high school students, or secondary, I shouldn't say high school, secondary students virtual, but I could give you their reasons off the top of my head.
Well, on top of that, though, if someone did feel that way, they would have the right to do so.
Yes.
I know not just with our students, we also have our teachers and administration that, this is their place of work. And I know that we've got teachers and administrators that are on both ends of this as well. We've got teachers who have, medical reasons to want the masks to still be on. Whether they're back from different treatments or have, persistent medical issues. And then we obviously have teachers who would probably prefer for masks to be optional. I mean, this is a decision that I know all of us have really been thinking about, and for us to, take the time now to discuss it in front of everybody else and the people that we've heard from. I know the people that voted for us and that provided us with their opinion and what they desired. We've seen, we've gotten quite a few emails, especially over the past few days. But I know that we've taken time to read those and think about where we're being led through all of this as well.
Well, as I said, since we're going into the holiday season and most people are gonna be together, and we've already seen that from like mid-November to mid-December, we have a huge increase in our community positivity rate. So we have another meeting on January 25th, and I think that if we want to reevaluate, we can. If we want to, if we want to monitor that, we're going to monitor that data on a regular basis. And if we feel that we see trends that would allow us to revisit this and make a different decision, whether we make amendments to the plan, but we can always do that.
I agree.
Absolutely. Are there any other comments?
I just want to say, I feel like I've heard from enough people in the past 3 or 4 days. They're looking for leaders. Our community wants us to be leaders. I think if we look at our mission statement, and our mission says that we are dedicated to providing a safe environment for our kids. If we're going to be those leaders, then now is the time to show that dedication and approve this plan that we've had in place with the amendment for quarantine.
So if we don't approve that, then somebody votes no for it, then they're not a dedicated leader. I mean, that's what your statement is.
I think right now is the time that we,
Pretty strong.
I feel strongly about it. Pete.
Do you travel, Adam? Do you go to a restaurant? Do you wear a mask at a restaurant where you eat?
Constantly.
No, you don't. You
Yes,
can't
I
eat
do.
through a mask.
I absolutely wear.
How do you
masks
eat a mask through a
constantly.
mask? It's not possible.
I don't think I need to justify my personal.
No,
habits.
but when you get
But I will
someone
tell you-
saying that a person that votes no is not dedicated,
I
I got
will tell you-
27 years on this board of dedication.
I spend.
How long
most
you
of
been
my
on this
time-
board dedicated?
I spend most of my time trying to protect those around me.
Well, I'm
And
glad.
I joined this school board. I was elected to this school.
And
board
so was I.
to further the mission we have.
And I was elected also for 27 years. So I think that's some dedication. So don't say a person that votes no is not dedicated. That's selfish.
I think everyone has the right to their opinion, and we all have the right to our vote. And I think that anyone sitting in this row of people is obviously dedicated to the children of this district. We've given more time than anybody, so no one's questioning that. At least I'm not. You have every right to your vote and your opinion.
All right, we have a motion that's been seconded for for continuing our mask mandate and rejecting the mask optional mandate. So again, this is for approving the the mask requirement and rejecting the mask optional plan. So we're just gonna go ahead. All those in favor of approving the continuing the mask mandate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye. Opposed.
All right, we will continue with mask now. Going to go ahead and move on to 5.03, the discussion for policy bddh, the public participation at board meetings. Again, this is something that we discussed at our last meeting. And I would like for us to have a first reading at our January meeting. I'd like for us to have a first reading at our January meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and read just a portion of our public comment section from our policy. It says that the board will establish a time limit of 5 minutes for the public comment period. No individual will be permitted to speak more than once during this period. The board will establish a uniform time limit for each speaker. Only items from the posted agenda item may be discussed. So as we discuss this, I want to make sure that we do, however it happened before, like I said, I believe it was just an oversight. But I mean, as far as putting into our first reading, I think we obviously need to have a longer time than 5 minutes for public comment. Would everybody agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
30.
Okay, so yeah, I think 30 is kind of where we began with, and so I think that's definitely something that we can add into our first reading of the public comment. And then let's see, and then we can basically add or parse out that time depending on how many comments we have, how many in-person comments we have, and how many sent-in comments that we have. What else are y'all thinking? As you looked around at some of the other schools, what did you see? Or what did you want to bring to the discussion?
My thought was that we're saying we want their comments 5 days from the board meeting, but that's a really quick turnaround. I feel like we need to be a little more, maybe like 3 days before. I just feel like if it comes in on a Friday and our meeting's on a Wednesday, it's a really quick turnaround time
For
for someone to be able to submit a public comment and write.
the public comments are submitted up to like
4
4
p.m.
o'clock today.
Yeah.
They could have gone to 4 o'clock today. I believe what you're thinking of is to suggest something for an agenda item. Okay, which they can do. And that's 5 days. That's 5 days before.
I did have one thought.
Yeah.
When it says we limit the public comment period, if we're discussing about 30 minutes, are we going to include public comments that are submitted electronically that are then read as part of that public comment period? Or are those going to essentially preclude the in-person public comment?
Yeah, I almost,
So SSD does it where whichever come in first, they get read first or they get to speak first.
Okay.
And then whenever you're out of 30 minutes, the board will read through the rest of them, but they don't all get read
Well,
or announced.
the public comments sent in would automatically be all read first. So my thought would be, let's see who is here first, and then we can kind of make that decision based off of.
Okay, yeah, I just asked for on a time frame, right?
Yeah.
If we get 30 public comments and we have 5 speakers wanting to speak, but those 30 public comments are 2 pages long each, and it takes 30 minutes to read them. I don't want people to feel excluded because we
Yeah.
sort of,
I don't know.
box ourselves in.
I agree.
Or
For the
even
public
electronic
comment.
submissions.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts regarding public comment regarding that in particular, what he's saying?
That's a slippery slope because then, we have, all of those written comments that we're gonna read and then we're gonna get 30 minutes in addition to that. And so then will be an hour and a half of public comment.
I agree.
So I think that that's important to limit. Now, I am gonna say this, I'm gonna apologize, I'm gonna excuse myself now because it's my sister's birthday and she's very ill. And I went there
Yeah.
to come be part of this and I want to go back there.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
thank you for
apologize.
joining
I
us.
will watch the YouTube so that I can see everyone's public comment because what people have to say is important too.
All right, thank you, Dawn.
Thank you all. Y'all have a Merry Christmas.
Are we talking about reading might take longer than people speaking? Like,
Well,
we're not-
just depending on how they bring in the comments. I think it's important because we want to value the people that are coming in, but we don't want to devalue the people that maybe can't come in, or right now we have limited space as well. So,
Well, they can read their thing and know if it's 3 minutes, right?
yeah, that's true.
Well, I think we could also change the word speaker to comment, right? So
Yeah.
instead the language of the board will establish uniform time for each comment.
Yeah.
I think that would probably cover all bases.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. You know, some of the things that we, that I saw, there was a big, there's quite a few different policies that had, leaving things, you had to make comment just on agenda items, you had to make comment on, on items that were, or you could make comments on anything. Again, those are things that we found when I looked at school districts around us. I saw both. Saw within our conference, so schools that are roughly the same size as us. I saw both. Comments as far as that, or providing. There are some that there were some that they had to provide. They had to basically write down what their comment was about before they were allowed to speak. Write their name, their address, and phone number. Our name and address, I believe it was on the comment card that I looked at. So there's a lot of different things that went into it. So, you look at these, none of them are the same. I printed off probably 6 or 7 of them just from, right around here and within our conference, and it was, this one is exactly the same as, same as ours. As far as the 4 main points, not permitted to speak more than once during each period, establish a uniform time limit for each speaker. Are there any other comments? Any other comments regarding public comment?
I think that it is gonna be difficult when you have people making public comments, also, through the internet and people showing up, because I can, if you show up, that means something.
Do you draw a number? Like, what if we have so many people speaking?
Well, that's what we do. We
Just like,
parse it out. We parse out times. We have 10 minutes. They all get, usually some of them said no more than 3 minutes per person, regardless of how many there were. And some of them said they parsed out based on, the president said, okay, there's 20 of you here. Each of you get a minute and, 15 seconds or whatever.
I think it's important to have people heard.
Yeah.
And if they want to speak it, I think it's great. Reading it is always harder, I think, for people to get the tone of what a person's talking about. If we're reading it, we're not getting their individual tone, what they're talking about. I think that's important to have them. They go in, they call in and read it themselves too.
Some of the things I think are important to leave on here, or maybe to add, are that, just a reminder on our policy that no commenter should expect a response or a conversation while we're doing this, while they're making their public comment. Questions won't be answered right then. And so I do want to make sure that we add that again, but we'll go ahead and draft a first read, and then from there we can make changes based on what we see fit, whether it is, like I said, I'm sure there'll be a host of things that we can look at, that we can bring in from other school districts, at least look at what they have, and go from there. I think that would be a good thing. So I've got a few things that I know we can add to our first reading, have a discussion on that. Next, we have any public comment on posted agenda items from anybody that's here. I know we have a few that are read. Do we have anybody here that is making a public comment? Anybody that's here that wants to make, okay, we've got one, two, hold on 1 second. Okay, we'll go ahead. You want to read these first and then
Sure.
do? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and read these first. Yeah, well, I mean, it's better.
So the first one is from Jennifer Duffy, 311 Wednesday Avenue. Her comment is, the amended return to learn plan is really troubling me. Some of the changes shocked me and I find them unacceptable. Previously, this document had pledged to follow the science and included references and links to concerns of disease control and American Academy of Pediatrics. My biggest issue with the amended plan is that it makes masks optional starting January 18th. The links to CDC and AAP guidance have been removed from the mask section as well. It would seem we are relaxing mask requirements in response to political pressure, not science. Because the fact is today we are seeing cases, hospitalizations, and death all on the rise. Hospitals are filling up, unable to accept transfers, and elective procedures are being pushed back. We're in the midst of a surge driven by the Delta variant and even now more transmissible variant coming up right on its heels. We have yet to see the holiday or travel season, which quite likely will drive numbers up even higher. So making this decision at this specific point in time makes no sense to me. For reference, I checked the CDC and AAP links from the previous plan. The guidance has not changed. Current recommendations and links are as follows. From the CDC. Due to the circulating and highly contagious Delta variant, CDC recommends universal masking by all students aged 2 and older, staff, teachers, and visitors to K-12 schools regardless of vaccination status. From the AAP, all students older than 2 years old and all school staff should wear masks at school unless medical or developmentally conditions prohibit use, regardless of vaccination status. The guidance from CDC and AAP has not changed, so why are we doing this? We can't possibly know next month what next month will look like and whether it'll be feasible to relax restrictions on January 18th. Doesn't it make sense to wait until January to make a decision about January when we can see where the numbers are actually headed? Putting this genie back in the bottle will be tricky at best. At worst, it could lead to increased resistance and dissension within our community and student body. Our kids do not need to be put in a position to make this decision themselves. They have enough peer pressure and negativity to contend with these days. Why would we add that burden to them by dragging them into this obviously political issue? Shame on us for passing the buck to them. Children should not be focused on politics. They should be focused on learning and doing normal kid things. And of all the normal things we've been fighting so hard for, will be at risk if we relax our COVID protocols prematurely. And let's not forget that our district is unique and that we have children of all ages on the same campus, some of which have not been able to get vaccinated yet. It's very unfair that the smallest and most vulnerable will be put at greater risk because they're able to have access to vaccines. Valley Park is a small school district, but we have a strong community with a big heart. And so far that has enabled us to do a fantastic job of keeping it together with our original plan, which is brilliant. Why would we even consider stepping back from the measures that have made us safe this far, right when we are heading into a winter surge? We should continue to do better because we have proven we are capable of doing better. Caving to political pressure makes us mediocre. Standing by our principles and following science will make us an example of a successful school district and how we get through a pandemic. Our second comment is from Sarah Yates, 332 Wednesday Avenue. Her comment was, I would like to discuss the COVID mitigation strategy.
All right, we have two that would like to make a comment here. Matthew, would you like to go first?
I think I mingled the mic.
Yes, please. Yeah, just so people online can hear you. Thank you for coming.
I think I offer a unique perspective being a student here. I want to thank board members first. Like what Mr. Coach said, we eat lunch and yeah, there is plans in place on like assigned seating, but that assigned seating gets moved around so much, students don't follow that. That's so frequently where there's rules that people are saying that we have, but those aren't being followed. Those aren't being enforced. You also have students who go outside of school. And if you look at like parties and people who hang out, even students who are like wearing masks in school, you don't see them wearing masks outside of school. And, I just think that if we're gonna look at masks in school, we need to both look at how students think they should be enforced, especially in high school where students are able to form their own opinions on their health and safety. Whereas if you look at elementary, they might not be able to and leave that to the parents, but in high school, I definitely believe it should be left up to student choice as well as parents guiding them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bone? Could you please, sorry, I haven't met you, this says Matthew, could you please state your name, once you get up there, and your address as well?
My name is Adam Bone, 478 Valparaiso Court. I came here tonight to speak in opposition to the returning to learning plan. Not because I don't oppose masks, but because I believe it doesn't go far enough. It's not good enough. Unfortunately, it was voted down tonight. The reason I say it's not good enough is because it could be implemented tomorrow. I do not understand why we have to wait another whole month to implement something that not only the courts have spoken to, the Attorney General has sent the board a cease and desist letter to this effect. So allowing another month of this opens the board up to a liability from a lawsuit from the Attorney General. He's already sued everyone, but most recently Columbia, the Columbia Public Schools was sued, if I'm not mistaken. So continuing this mask mandate opens us up to liability. There is no need to subject kids to this wholly unnecessary psychological child abuse by strapping dehumanizing face diapers on them for 8 hours a day. There's no benefit, even if you believe masks are of a benefit. In the entire state of Missouri, eight children under the age of 18 have died. 8, the entire state. Over half of those children were over the age of 15. In St. Louis County, 1 child has died, and they were between the ages of 15 and 17. This is according to the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services website. Clearly, there's no need for this. Children are essentially unaffected by this disease. It's hard for them to transmit it, it's hard for them to contract it. And when they do contract it, they have a very mild, relatively mild case, especially in comparison to much older people who have the highest mortality rates. I would say that there's also unintended consequences for requiring these nonsensical things on children's face, especially the much younger children. The effects of socialization, learning, they're seeing their teachers' faces, being able to learn at that young age. There's a lot of harm. There's a lot of dermatological issues, especially for teenagers dealing with this. So there's harm associated with these unnecessary things and benefits that are to be seen. I also speak to the 4% threshold that is set for next year. Keeping this sort of Damocles over children's head for the rest of their time in school, it disincentivizes people to report sickness because they don't, I can assume the peer pressure of K through 12 is still there, but they do not want to be the ones responsible for bringing this back on them, on their peers. And the fact that next year, if the 4% is in place, there's a tacit admission that the school board believes they have the legal authority, contrary to a cease and desist letter from the Attorney General to that effect. And yet again, that just brings back more legal liability. Finally, in regards to busing, the CDC thought that they had the legal and moral authority to initiate a rental moratorium by themselves with no law by Congress, just from the blue. This was struck down. Likewise, this busing mandate is literally just an executive order from the president. The federal government has no authority in interstate transit, including buses. But why would the federal government have any authority in this matter, whether constitutionally or if they had constitutional authority? It should go through Congress, not one man issuing these orders for the entire country. I think that the school board should intercede on behalf of their students and tell the federal government many things, but in this instance, we're not going to comply with this order because it has no constitutional or legal merit behind it. And that's just all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn to executive session. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, we'll begin with Faye.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Adam.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Nicole.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. We are adjourned. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening.